Let's move into our review. This is a highly anticipated review. This is the big game of Gen Con. I'm going to say right now, I think this is the first podcast to review this game that I'm aware of.
Nice.
We'll see what happens the next few days, but we are excited to review this today. This is Black Angel. It plays 1 to 4 players in 60 minutes to 120 minutes. I think that is completely accurate.
It is a very fast game. We've taken it to the table now 3 times.
Experienced players can play a 4-player game in under 2 hours. Easy. 2 players, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Not a long game. Weight on this is 3.70. That's about right. I think that's somewhere in there. We'll talk about this a little bit. The designer is Sébastien Dujardin and Xavier Georges and Elaine Orban. Sébastien Dujardin is the designer of Trois, which is one of my favorite games of all time. I've said before that it is my favorite game of all time. I think that is not necessarily incorrect. Sébastien Dujardin and Xavier Georges and Elaine Orban, all 3 of them, were involved in Trois, which is an incredible, lovely game. Art by Ian O'Toole, the king of board game art.
It's beautiful.
We'll talk about the art in the review. It is gorgeous. Published by Pearl Games and Asmodee. Let me go ahead and read you the story
Flavor text
of Black Angel. And I'm going to say this right now. This is my favorite board game flavor text ever. The story of this game is so wonderful and ridiculous. Sit back, relax. This is Black Angel. Humanity, through its irresponsible behavior, has exhausted the natural resources of Earth, making it almost uninhabitable. In a burst of lucidity, pressed by the irreversible degradation of your planet, the great nations are forced to put aside their differences and share their knowledge in order to create the most vast spacecraft ever constructed. Thus, the Black Angel Project is launched. The Black Angel, the first intergalactic frigate in history, must transport the genetic heritage of humanity beyond known worlds, over a journey that is likely to last several thousand years. Her crew will be composed of only robots, because no nation is willing to trust creation of the AI, artificial intelligence, that will control this crew to any other nation. A compromise is found. The Black Angel will be co-managed by several AIs, and the utility of each decision will be evaluated in VP, validation process. At the completion of this long and perilous voyage, when a new inhabitable planet has been reached, the AI that has earned the most VP, validation process, will be entrusted with reawakening humanity, and overseeing its new start. All the reports are in agreement. The Black Angel is approaching Spez, a planet with the highest probability for habitability by the human species. Take advantage of our approach to maintain the good relations you have, gradually woven with the benevolent alien species populating the galaxy, and watch out for the dreaded Ravagers, who would do anything to prevent you from reaching Spez. That is a great story.
And we'll talk about this in the review, it actually kind of It helps the game.
Yeah,
it actually helps the game.
What a creative and interesting theme for a game. 4 AIs controlling a mega ship with all of the DNA of humans on the planet, left to survive. I don't know if there's actually humans or if we're just carrying DNA.
It says genetic code, so
yeah.
I think there's nobody actually there.
We're just carrying all this human DNA with us to slowly clone to this planet called Spez, S-P-E-S. And there are other alien races we found along the way that we'll be dealing with, trading with, and stuff. And there are also Ravagers who want to make sure we never make it to Spez. But you are playing as an AI, an artificial intelligence, doing your best to get the ship there safely. And the ship that the AI that makes it there safely will be the AI that takes over in the end, and sort of
claim. Validation process.
Validation. I love that they took VP and just gave it another silly name.
It's perfect.
Very fun. So let's talk about this game. This is, and I'm going to assume nobody's played Trois, and we're going to talk about basics, but there is a lot of Trois similarities here.
The DNA of Trois is being carried by the spacecraft.
Of Black. That is exactly correct. Yeah. So this is dice worker placement with a sort of a space board that is a bit of a round tracker for the game, a time limit for the game, as well as a place for new actions to be put on the board. So there is a bit of worker placement in terms of where your dice are going, things like that. But then there's also, you're building a physical board space and you must travel with one of your little alien ships in order to get to new actions as they come out.
And just a few resources. There's really only about 3 or 4 resources, depending on how you want to count it, And so there's a scarcity aspect, but with very few decisions to make.
Yeah.
You just have a very tight amount of decision space. There's really only 4 to 5 actions that are present. And so in that kind of, you're only taking a handful of actions with those dice. You are then assigning your workers, and then that's it. That's why it finishes in 2 hours, because you really tight space. You will never have enough to do all the things you want to do, all the things you're supposed to do for like this particular validation process, and then you're done.
This game is less heavy than I first anticipated. I think this is I don't think. I know this game is less heavy than Trois.
Absolutely.
Trois is more complicated and longer and a harder teach. This is a simpler teach.
Still kind of a heavy teach, though.
It's a teach.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's a real teach. It's a minimum 30-minute teach.
Yeah. For such a fast game, it's kind of a long teach.
Nothing in the game is complicated. There's just a lot of things to explain. So the main reason of that is there are 2 boards in the game. I've never seen a game like this before. There is your basic board with a bunch of different worker placement spots, and then you build a space board out of chevron-shaped pieces. We talked about a game, or we reviewed a game called Solenia in round 1, and that is by the same designer, and that was him taking this one aspect of Black Angel and making a light to medium weight family-friendly game out of it. And the aspect being that, so you are in a ship that's moving, and as you pick up a chevron, you flip it over, and you move it to the front, and that simulates sort of the conveyor belt moving forward, and then you keep moving the ship forward. So it looks like you're traveling through space as the pieces sort of fall behind.
This is a good time to talk about the artwork, because it really does kind of have this, like, you are traveling at light speed through a universe and taking these little side missions, but it really becomes evocative. The board does a really good job of that, and especially the caterpillar motion of moving these chevron pieces around.
So I've heard that Ian O'Toole said when he was asked to come onto this project and he knew it was a sci-fi space project, he said, "I'm willing to do it as long as I don't have to make it blue and black," which is what every space game is. Yeah. And they said, sure, go for it. And so the game does not use colors you would anticipate. It is yellow and orange and a lot of pink.
Yeah.
Bright neon. It looks like, if you are familiar with the films of Gaspar Noé, it looks like something out of Enter the Void. Yeah. It is a sort of almost a psychedelic and wild landscape.
It reminds me of the version of like the 90s Star Trek teleporter future.
Okay,
vibes.
Yeah, totally. Which it is not bleak. It is beautiful and interesting. And I mean, if you walk by this on a table, you are stopping and looking at it if you've never seen it before.
Absolutely.
It is crazy. So you've got this conveyor belt spaceship, and that is sort of the timer of the game. So you have Spez in the upper right-hand corner farthest away from you when you start the ship.
One of two timers.
And so when Spez falls off the conveyor belt, then you actually pick up this planet and put it in front of you. And now when the ship lands on that planet, that signals the game end. That is one game end, yes. The other game end is the Ravager deck. So Ravagers are going to be messing with the Black Angel, and they're going to be attacking it and making the worker placement spots on the Black Angel. So the actual board and then the chevron board are 2 separate things, but the actual board is a close-up of the cockpit of the Black Angel.
Beautifully done.
Beautifully done. If you actually look at the art, you see it's like, okay, here's the board we're on, and then the actual worker placement board is like a zoom-in close-up of the head of the ship, and so we're all in there. So on that board, the Ravagers can start attacking things and making the worker placement spots worse or hard to go to. Now, when you want to go to this spot, you have to do something like give away a card or lose a resource or things like that. Or even if it's really damaged, the dice you use to go there are lowered. So much like Trois, your dice are going to decide how many times you do an action. So in Trois, if you place a 6 on something, you get to do the action 6 times. If you place a 1, you get to do it once. The dice in Black Angel are a little less variable. They only range between 1 and 3.
0 and 3.
0 and 3, sorry. They only range between 0 and 3, and I believe 1 is on there twice, and 0 is on there once, and that's it. So there's no 4s and 5s or 6s on there. 0, 1, 2, or 3 on there. So your ranging is between 0 and 3. So 0 actually means you cannot do the action at all if you roll zeros, and we'll talk about that.
There's 2 1s, 2 3s.
Okay. No, I think it's just 2 1s, maybe 2 2s. I mean, 2 zeros.
It's 2 zeros, 2 2s, 1, and 3. That must be what it is.
No, the 1 is more than the 2 because the 1s can flip into 3. That's
why it has to be 2 3s if there's 2 1s.
No, it's 2 1s, 2 zeros, a 2, and a 3. I think that's it.
No, because the zeros flip over to 2s.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
We're strong on games, weak on math.
Yeah. That's right. Okay. Anyway, the dice range between 0 and 3. So, but if a space on the board has really been attacked by Ravagers, even if you put a 3 there, it gets knocked down to a 2. And if you put a 1 there, it gets knocked down to a 0. So the Ravagers can really start messing, and that is the other ticking clock of the game. If the Ravager deck goes empty, that also signals the end of the game and triggers a little bit different of an endgame scoring. So in addition, a little bit, yeah, it's not a cooperative game. But there is if we don't make it to Spez, there are certain things that don't score in the end, which can be good or bad because you can very much try to speed the game up, and
it's almost a Battlestar Galactica unzipping kind of feel.
A little bit, yeah. You can be like, I'm going to tank the ship on purpose because I know that I will win if this happens because you have invested so much in certain endgame scores that now won't happen because that happened. So there is a feeling of a semi-cooperative game in the sense that we're all working to get here. But some of us might be working against getting there in order to win. But there's still only one winner. There's no cooperative wins here. There's no shared victories.
It's where the story, though, comes in play. Where that story, that initial storyline that you read, really makes it feel like it's cooperative. Otherwise, it could just be, scheme-wise, it could be very blank. But that little bit of flavor text really makes it feel like you were trying to do this thing. And then that one person like ruining it is pretty rad, actually.
Yeah. And it's come into a couple of games that we played. So... let's now talk about sort of our feelings of the game. So, sorry, one last thing. So, in addition to the 2 big boards we've talked about, the Chevron spaceship board and the worker placement board, there is also your own personal player board, in which you are playing a totally other game going on there. Mm-hmm. This is why the teach can be a little long, just because you have to teach all 3 games. So, there's the Chevron game, there's the actual worker placement game, and then there's your player board game, which you're playing a little game there. And the game you're playing there is with technology tiles. So you have a 3x3 grid in front of you, and you can be buying, you start with 3 technologies there. Everybody starts with them, the random positions, but they're all the same. And you can buy new technology tiles. And the technology tiles don't do anything on their own, but at the beginning of your turn, you can place a card below or next to the 3x3 grid in order to sort of thematically light up everything in a row and trigger all those things. So you're playing a little bit of a row game of things that are going to hit, and so if you play, there's 3 different types of cards in the game. There's yellow, green, and gray, and those are the same cards that match the dice in the game, and so and the technologies in the game. So if you play a green card, it will light up all your green technologies, and you'll get all of the things on them, and they're just resources. So you're getting like a damage cube, and you're getting there's
a lot of comboing though. There's a lot of like, okay, well if I activate this row, I get these 3 things, and that might affect my move that turn. Right. And there's a nice game to that aspect. There's a nice it's all synergistic. You're all paying attention. Nobody's totally without. It's not a solo solitary kind of game. But at the same time, it is a little complicated. Those spinning wheels.
Totally. Yeah. And then so Ravager cards. So you can actually help so a lot of the worker placement things are either about launching ships from the Black Angel. So your robots actually are resources in the game, and you put them in these little ships, and they fit very nicely, by the way, and they fly around and go to other planets and go to other missions there, or start missions there as well. So, but you can help clear the Ravagers from the Black Angel, and then when you have those Ravager cards, you can use them as sort of wilds in your board in order to light up different technologies. And the Ravagers will do everything in a row, where without a Ravager, it will only light up the matching colored cards. So green will only match up green technology, but Ravagers will light up everything in that row, and you'll get all the goods on that row, which is...
And I will say, too, that tech section, although it is where you kind of get your little bonuses that help you achieve these nominal amounts of help with your worker placement, it also is the place where you're eventually going to get your majority of endgame scoring, which then mucks up the programs. You have to sacrifice your intricate little program design to get your end game scoring into the mix, and then eventually into areas where you're going to score them more. And so there is a certain point where you have to shift gears and basically go into end game mode when see the planet within reach potentially.
But you have to time it out right, because so there are 2 different types of technology tiles. There's standard technology tiles and then advanced technology tiles. The advanced technology tiles are only end game scoring and don't give you any resources. So when you, like I said, light up a row on your board, if it hits an advanced one, nothing happens. So it's just, like Alfred said, it just mucks up the works. But you actually want to get it out of there. So when you add new tech tiles, it sort of pushes them through a line, and you're trying to get it off of your board and into these special slots where they can start scoring more points. So every advanced technology is limited to 4 points maximum. You don't get 4 points for it, but the most it can score. So it scores different things, like different amount of tiles, different amount of pieces on the board, things like that.
It actually is one of those wonderfully brain burnery things, because oftentimes what it's scoring is something in the state that it will be in the end of the game.
Yeah.
Your tech tiles on your board at the end, or the kind of cards that have then populated the universe that you're playing with.
Yeah.
And if you time it wrong, you're not going to have those things there. And suddenly this thing that was supposed to be earning all these points is negated. And so
Right.
it really, and it's oftentimes the case with a lot of these worker placement games, but especially this one, you will not achieve everything you want to do.
Yeah. So those are the three major aspects of the game. You're taking your dice. So at the beginning of your turn, like in Twa, you're rolling your dice. Those are your workers for the round. Other people can buy your workers from you, which is a bummer, but you get a resource, and that resource can be used to buy other tokens. You can lock a die at the beginning when you roll dice as well to prevent people from stealing them. So that's the thing like Twa, where there's this sort of communal pool of dice. Some are yours, but you can buy other people's too and use them. But you can manipulate your own dice and flip them over. So everything is always a difference of 2. So 1 flips into a 3, a 0 flips into a 2. A 2 flips into a 0. You would never do that. And you spend these cubes, which are the cubes that damage the ship. So you're healing the ship and then using those cubes to flip your dice. So the more you help the ship, the more you can help yourself. And you're buying dice from people and you're putting them onto places on the board and you're doing things like that. But let's just get into our feelings about the game.
I can express that I am a huge fan of Twa.
Yes.
But one thing that I've always found to be difficult about Twa is there is an aspect of the warriors at the gate, the raiders at the gate, right? These kind of like antagonists that somebody has to take care of.
Right.
And some people's game is specifically incentivized to take care of those raiders. And
Right.
sometimes you're playing a game where nobody's really incentivized to do it, or nobody's really capable of
Right.
doing it. It builds up.
Right.
And there is this kind of thing of waiting for someone else to do the work. Now in this game, the raiders aren't too problematic. They're actually a resource that you really want to get into your hands.
That's the thing. You want the raiders to attack at a certain point.
They're very useful, and honestly, like the only way to combo is to kind of get them involved, to get these kind of things. So there's actually an aspect of this game where it's a little bit deprioritized, but it's a little bit more welcomed into the game. Like you really want that into the game space rather than these kind of like unending challenges that are there. So in regards to looking at Twa and looking at this game, I feel like this one's a little bit more holistic. This one, every aspect it reminds me of Teotihuacan. Like there's the spinning gear feeling where everything is kind of feeding each other. There's like everything's a little bit in concert. And if you're not playing the total game, you're not going to do well.
Yeah. So to me, the weirdest thing about this game is the pacing.
Yeah.
And it took at least 2 games. So I've played now at 4, 4, and 2. I've played it twice at 4 and once at 2. And I will just say off the bat, I think it plays great at any player count. I think this is I really enjoyed this as a 2-player game. I really enjoyed this as a 4-player game. I think that's one of its strengths, is that I think the gameplay experience is great. I have not played solo. There is a solo version of it. I imagine it's good. I think I wouldn't say this is a game to buy just for the solo probably, but I haven't played it yet, so I can't review that. But I think the pacing is strange. This is definitely one of those Euros that ends one turn too early.
Yes.
Now, that could be a design and not a bug. That could be a feature, not a bug, because a lot of great Euros, Agricola is perfect because it ends a turn too early. Agricola feels like it always ends one turn too early. Oh, if I had only had one more round, I could have seen this master thing come. Right. But that's the point. Like if you actually had that turn, the whole point is doing the best you can, knowing that you're going to have this limited amount of time and no one's ever going to see their perfect machine come to life. But this feels like every game I really want another one. Like the gameplay experience feels like, well, I didn't get to have as much fun as I like. It always ends like. And look, I'm just going to say right now, this is my most anticipated game of the last 5 years, probably. I mean, this is my favorite game of all time sequel in a lot of ways, right? And so it's going to be hard for me not to be disappointed, but I'm going to just say right now, I'm disappointed by this game. That doesn't mean I don't like it. It doesn't mean I don't like it a lot. I think I had high expectations for it. I would prefer to play Twa.
I hear you on that, and I think Twa is maybe... Yeah, in terms of dice rolling, in terms of distribution, there's a lot of things to kind of say that Troyes is that game. Troyes is that game that really did that, set that mark, set that standard. And this game has some really novel concepts. I will say, and to the benefit of Black Angel, the artwork is gorgeous, and just
the theme is incredible.
From a rules lawyer standpoint, everything is on every board. You look around and you will see iterations of the rules going on, so that kind of
graphic
a constant
design
reminder
of
how to play this game. You actually, in some ways, you don't have to explain it. If you just had people look at their board and look at the surrounding areas, they would know exactly what to do, where to place it, how to play.
Yeah, you don't need the rule book with this game. It's all written out for you on the game state.
And like really, really well done.
Yeah,
and something that Troyes doesn't have, because there's a lot more exceptions on Troyes.
Yeah. So here's the two. I'm going to just tell you my two main things that don't make this better for Troyes for me, and it may be unfair to compare it to Troyes, because I don't necessarily think the designer should just try to make Troyes every time. Obviously, there are a lot of similarities here. It's hard to not point out the similarities, but this is lighter and faster. And I think that might have been a huge part of his goal with this, was to make a more accessible version of Troyes with a definitely more accessible and exciting theme. Yeah. The theme of Troyes is very basic Euro styles. But this, to me, the main issue is the sameness of every game a little bit. Troyes is a different game every time you play it. So the cards that come out and the actions that come out that are available to you is very much a making lemonade out of lemon situation, right? You're given a certain amount of actions, and it's about who can figure out the best way to turn those actions into a point generating machine. In Black Angel, yes, there are cards that are going to come out, and they are going to decide the different missions that you can go to and the different things that can happen. But the game happens so quickly that there isn't necessarily enough variance within those that come out that's going to make it a totally different experience every time. I've played 3 times now, and the main differences are, is this going to be a game where we get to spez, or is this going to be a game where the Ravagers run down the clock? And that, to me, is the exciting difference of sort of that fight for that difference there. But it's lacking, and Trey pointed this out in our first game, it's lacking, like, you wish it had those Gaia Project asymmetrical powers. You wish, like, oh, now I want to play and try this. And I felt like after 3 games, I don't feel like there's I still feel like there's room to explore, but I don't feel like there's a ton of room to explore.
The cards in your hand dictate a lot of the way you play, because it has a little bit of, there's some intricate mechanics in terms of where you're going to be positioning in terms of the outer space play, and the cards have a lot to do with that, as well as they're also enabling you to do your combo moves on your personal board. But I will say that oftentimes when I have made a bad roll, and it is demonstrably bad, I have zeros, and I can always buy other people's dice, but that's to a limited degree and a limited sum. So I have noticed that at least in my second game, I still won my second game, but I just had less fun because I wasn't able to achieve much on the board. Right. I was able to get to my goals and everything, but just in terms of my actual turns, I had a series of turns where I rolled poorly, and I did 2 things. That was like, and not even very well.
So that is a big thing, because in Troyes, you can roll badly, but you can dig yourself out of it every time. There are resources you can spend to manipulate your dice. You can spend an influence to re-roll, right? You're still re-rolling, but you can basically get what you want if you have the resources to spend. In Black Angel, you can just roll poorly, and there's no way out of it.
You can flip dice, but the max you're going to get is like a
2. So that's the thing. If you roll zeros, the max you're going to get is a 2. And there is a lot of actions that are wildly inefficient at 2. You need, like, if you want to go and get more technologies, which is going to be one of your main end game scoring things, you really want that 3, because you need to buy a 2. So it costs 2 to get an advanced one, and then you need to spend 1 to get another one to help push it faster through. So the 2 is okay, but it comes down to this. Yes, you can do good things with 2s, but if you're rolling only zeros and turning them into 2s, and your opponent is rolling 3s, they're going to win. Like, they're just going to do better than you because of their rolls.
I mean, there is an element of, you can maybe, if you're rolling very, very low, maybe people out there will point this out, you can help speed the game's end. You can push things along, but again, you were just, from a facet of doing something in the game, you were doing less when you were speeding up the game. You were just not. I mean, and again, you may still win, you may still achieve, but that isn't the goal, of course. Like, you are spacefaring, AI. Like, there's all this, like, great theme that you're just not playing at that point.
Right. Yeah. I almost want, like, usually the game ends and I'm just like, oh man, I feel like it was about to get awesome. Like, I feel like I was about to get my text going. I was about to, and it's like, and it's not the feeling of like Like in Agricola, like you don't feel bummed out that you didn't get to that last turn. You're more just like, oh wow, like I did pretty good for the amount of time I had. In this, I feel like there's a third act of the story missing. Like it's a little uneventful. Like you land at Spez and you're like, oh wow, we got to Spez pretty quick. Like, okay.
I mean, I know this is a criticism that people level with a lot of Euros where, you play this game and you have this theme and then all of a sudden you just kind of points.
Yeah.
And then that happens. This game does have a little aspect of like, there is a little bit of a reveal in terms of the tech that people were buying, but that's kind of it. There's not that much end game deformity. I will say though, as a benefit, as a good marker, a lot of our games end up very tightly pointed.
Yeah.
Like the difference between the first and second place has been at most like 2 points in most of these games.
Yeah.
So that is pretty extraordinary that despite all this variance and all this kind of like inequity of like maybe you're rolling poorly and stuff, you still get very close endings. And maybe that has to do with the fact that it ends a turn early. So nobody gets their engine really going.
Yeah. And look, I'm open to the idea that, look, I've played this 3 times. So that's not a lot, but it's enough to talk about it and enough to have a pretty strong feeling on it. But I could be wrong. I could really feel like, oh, wow, so there's a different strategy here. And it's really going to be about forcing the different endgame states. And, I feel like in my third game, I got better. Like I definitely... I think, I don't know. My third game, I kind of realized technology is too strong, I think.
Well, I was kind of wondering if this was going to have a seaweed strategy situation, like
Yeah.
Underwater Cities. If there was one strategy that we just aren't quite seeing as being dominant yet because we haven't had enough
Right.
plays, that we have to all be piling in on. I mean, the tech track gets very thin very fast if you're really going in on it.
Right. But like getting those advanced techs, like getting 4 points for one action is a lot of points for one action in this game. And I think there's 2 main strategies in this game. One is lots of missions on the board and lots of point missions because you can get point grabs every time you own a mission and points falling off the back of the board as well. Or just going heavy on special techs.
But I will say that special techs are very much informed and helped by the cards you're using on the board. There's an element of this game where the cards are falling off and they go into your tableau, so to speak.
Right, and that ups the ceiling of how much points they can give you.
And you kind of have to be doing both of those to really maximize either.
Yeah.
So again, scarcity is an issue, and maybe this game just is a little underwhelming for us.
Yeah, so I really like this game, and I've played it 3 times now, and I'm genuinely excited to play again. I'm sitting here thinking, oh man, I want to play it again. I want to try more things.
Yeah.
But I still also feel like if someone said, do you want to play Trois? I'd be like, yeah, I'd rather play Trois. I'm more excited to play Trois, which came out in 2010, and I've played probably 75 times. I'm more excited to play that for the 76th time than I am to play Black Angel the 4th. So, but that could just be, I like longer, heavier, crunchier games. Yeah. Trois is not crazy long, but Trois is still 2.5 hours, I think. I think Trois, Trois says on BGG 90 minutes. Which
and if you factor in a teach, it's going to be way longer.
Yeah, Trois is much harder to teach. It takes people 4 or 5 games to even like understand what the hell's happening in Trois. Yeah. Whereas I think by Black Angel, it takes 1 game. And I think then by the second game you get it. But I think the main learning curve is that pacing. Because I think you think like, oh, this is an engine building game. I'm going to build these engines. I'm going to get my resources going. I'm going to start doing this. Oh, the game just ended? Oh, okay. That's how it feels, right? It's like, so, and I think after our first game, I was like, oh, wow. So you don't get to really do, and okay, got it. You have like 8 actions in this whole game.
It's not an engine builder exactly. It's something a little bit in between.
Yeah. And I think because of how short the game is, if you're rolling zeros the whole time, I think you're just doing worse and it's not your fault.
Or you're just playing a slightly different game. You're playing the speed up the end game and try to get your little points in.
So the difference between a Spez ending and a Ravager ending is at the end of the game, all resources, there's 4 main resources in the game. There's your robots, there is crystals, there is debris, and there is ships. You take all of those, add them together, divide it by 2. That's victory points. If you get to Spez, you score those. If you don't get to Spez, you don't. And there are people in the game who are most likely, one of the strategies is just accumulating a ton of resources and getting to Spez. You could easily get 10 to 20 points, which is probably going to be half your score in this game. This is a game that all of our games have ended somewhere in the early 50s. Mm-hmm. So that's a ton. So if somebody then rushes the Ravager strategy and you don't get to score that, you've just lost half your score. So you've probably lost the game. And
the way you rush the Ravager strategy is you put a lot of things on the board, so they're likely going to be activating space.
And if you're rolling low, you're every time you re-roll your dice, you are speeding up the process of getting to Spez. You're moving the back chevron up to the front, and you're moving the ship forward. So the ship moving forward is a ticking clock. But if one of the ways to win the game is to shorten the game, I don't know how much, what the player experience of that, I don't know what fun that's adding, because you're having fun playing the game, and now to win, the game is shorter. So to me, like I don't want my games to be shorter if I'm having fun.
Yeah, it may just be playing to a different place.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's cool that we can play. This is definitely a very heavy game for its time. Like, to play a 90-minute game with this level of heaviness is cool. There's not many games like you could easily play this and another game in a game night, which is cool. That's a cool thing.
We've done that.
You're not playing TWA on something else in a game night, most likely.
You know, it's funny. You think about like a Tricarion, which has like 3 separate boards, right? 3 separate sections that you're playing, and you're very much in deficient in terms of how much resources you have going out. And that takes like 5 hours?
Yeah.
So here's a 90-minute game that has 3 boards. Like, that's kind of insane.
Yeah. And TWA also has, there's some things about TWA that I don't love. The hidden victory points in TWA I don't necessarily love. I think it's very hard to read the game state, and I think he solved that in this game. It's very easy to read the game state in this game. You can really look at somebody's board and very quickly see how well they're doing.
And I do think the Raiders thing can be just kind of like, if nobody's doing it, and it's all just being shrugged, it can kind of swing around and hit you without you really trying to. Yeah. It's a little arbitrary, I feel like, sometimes.
I think what this game's made me realize is that I like heavier, longer games. And this to me is like, if it's like I'm sitting down to eat a meal and it's like, oh man, this is my favorite food in the world, and then after I've eaten half of it, someone takes the plate away, and it's like, but I mean, I love it, it's my favorite meal, but would have liked to have a little more of it.
It's a very beautiful plate presentation, but maybe.
It's one of the most beautiful games I've ever played physically.
Yeah, it's really nice.
And component-wise, and the story is amazing. And I love all the components. It does interesting. I mean, this designer, this designing group, to me, is incredible.
Just to chime in on one detail, though, that I think they could have done differently on the design is you'll see a lot of iterations on the planet styles, and that this is somewhat out of necessity. There's a certain color scheme, and there's a certain
iconography is all very the same.
It doesn't need to be like that. It could use unique iconography, but it's like
I will say the art of the 3 aliens is cool. There's not much theme that comes through it, but the imagery that Ian O'Toole put to those definitely adds the theme. There would have been nothing. They're just yellow, orange, and whatever.
They could have easily been like that, but they do all repeat in a way that isn't necessary. They could have had different chevrons, but it's all good. It's like small things, splitting hairs. It's really the weight of the game dictates what I think a review is. So
and I think this is a game that could be improved by an expansion. What's funny is that I think TWA was laterally improved. Like, there are things about TWA's expansion that I think are better, and there's things about TWA's expansion that I think are worse. I think there is a handful of action cards in the TWA expansion, Ladies of TWA, that makes the game worse. And I think there's a handful that make it better. So the TWA expansion was a mixed bag for me. Some of it, like the purple dye, is great, but you need that. But like, there's certain things in it that I don't love as much, and just vanilla TWA I think is sort of perfect in its own. But so I don't know if an expansion is going to solve it for Black Angel.
Let's get some cosmic encounters in there. Let's do this.
Some Gaia Project asymmetrical powers. I don't know. I'm definitely like I guess I want more. So I think an expansion could help. That being said, I like the game a lot. I want to keep playing it. I want to keep exploring it. I'm not going to be shocked if I play it more and find out that there's more to it than I originally thought. So I'm leaving that door open. But I'm also not going to be surprised if I play it more and find that I've sort of solved it. Not solved it, but feel like I've experienced it.
Well, I'm sure this is arriving in a lot of people's game tables right now. And so those of you out there maybe on the forums, let us know your experiences, but also equally take this stuff in stride and prove us wrong.
Lighter and shorter is a huge plus for most people.
Yeah.
And this theme is going to draw people in and make it a lot easier to get to the table. TWA is hard to get to the table. It's dry. The art is gorgeous. I mean, I love the way it looks, but it's this theme is you're playing different AIs, and you're attacking, and you're setting up missions in space, and the Ravagers are attacked. I mean, this is fun. It's just like it's a much better theme and faster and easier to teach than his other game. So I think that's going to be a bonus for most people.
Let us know. Let us know your own personal feelings. Don't let us ruin the stew.
Look, it's like it's like the blockbuster of the year.
And those of you and
very exciting.
And TWA did come out some years ago. You maybe haven't played it. Just let this also be a shining advertisement for that game as well. From the same designers, play that game.
Try TWA. Absolutely. I mean, it's a perfect masterpiece, wonderful game.